support what they want to believe. I'll be
No
just
one
giving you a counterexample to that.
No one wants to believe that. That's why it's a very seductive lie.
How are you defining it as a lie, though? What gives you the logic that you are right when you say it's a lie?
Well, you're the one that mentioned logic. It's completely illogical that someone is dead for 36 hours. Blood is coagulated.
Yeah, but Hans,
flies are walking on their eyes.
Hans, this is based on their beliefs in God has the ability to rise a body from the dead. So that's why they believe it. You understand that, right? So
I love believing that.
I'm happy for you. But the problem with this whole martyrdom claim that the apostles demonstrate that they're sincere, but it still doesn't completely make the resurrection of true, right? Just because they have...
Never claimed it is.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
I said that that's an argument against the proposition that they're lying. Now, you could try to maintain, okay, maybe they're not lying, but they're honestly mistaken in some way. Cora kind of hinted at that with saying, hinting to like a swoon hypothesis. Maybe Jesus didn't really die on the cross. We can dig into that if you want to. But point being, I think it's going to be a little bit, like my response is going to look different. In any case, I'm not just saying it's true because they were sincere about it. I'm saying they weren't lying because they were sincere about it.
You would have to intend to lie for it to be a lie. I don't think they intended to lie. I think they believed what they were told.
Why are we assuming that this is what they are told? Their
Because
claim is that they saw the resurrected Jesus.
They didn't see Jesus come back to life.
Well, they claim to.
Just because you claim something doesn't mean it's true fact.
I know, but you're saying that you don't think that they're lying. So then you have to explain how someone can honestly come to think that they witnessed a resurrected person.
Okay,
And you're... Sorry,
go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
Well, so I was just saying, then you were saying like, oh, well, someone told them this. I'm not going to believe I experienced something because someone told me I experienced it. That would be absurd. So what has to be accounted for is the content of their experience. This isn't something they believe because someone else told them.
If I'm a death cult leader, right, like which is common, like a messianic death cult leader, right, around that time, and I have a ritualized dinner, and then I take some Bible poison so that I can hallucinate while I'm like praying in a garden, right, and then I get arrested before I can take the antidote, and crucified while I'm still tripping, right, and then they take me down before I'm actually dead because they didn't break my legs, they actually cut lungs so that the fluid would drain out, right, and then I got nursed back, by some people overnight, and I came out, and I'm still in a psychotic state, and I probably fried my brain, and I'm going to tell people I came back from the dead. Like, seriously, dude. Like, there's so many other explanations than the man actually came back from the dead.
Yeah, the question is, are they better
explanation, by the way, that he came back from the dead? That's the Scourge was pretty well done.
Yeah, I mean, I would disagree.
Yeah, when you say better explanations, right, depends on who you're asking. Of course, from the God believers, they're going to say, no, we have a better explanation because God is all-powerful and almighty, right? So that's why.
Well, JCC, there are criteria of best explanations, right? More parsimonious explanations, explanatory power, explanatory scope, et cetera, right? So it's not just a matter of like there are actual criteria of what makes an explanation valid.
What? Well, what is the criteria that justifies Jesus rising from the dead?
The general criteria that I just listed for a imprint to the best explanation.
And I love that best explanation.
The best explanation. Like, you have to eliminate a lot of their cultural practices and historical context to get to that being the quote best explanation. Like, it's silly. There were all sorts of other practices in the region, all throughout that area, that mimic the same things. Even like the story of Lazarus, right, is indicative that there were common like practices. Like, I think the better explanation for Lazarus was he freaking went unconscious from doing some sort of like ritualized, hallucinogenic thing, and they thought he was dead. They put him in there, and Jesus went in, gave him an antidote, or like talked him, got him revived. But he wasn't really dead. He was just like unconscious, and then brought him out. Did he smell? Was he in there a while? Sure, but he probably smelled because he shit himself. Like, seriously, there's so many other better explanations.
Corey, have you read that story recently?
I have.
Because Jesus doesn't go in the tomb in that story.
No, he calls him out. But you know what, Dave? It makes far more sense in the Synoptic Gospels where they talk, and I'm sure you're familiar with this. This rabbi comes to Jesus and says, "Save my daughter," right? Jesus comes in the house, all these people are shrieking because they think the daughter's dead. And what does Jesus tell these people actually happened to the daughter?
You'll probably have to refresh my memory.
Well, he tells them she's not dead, she's asleep. She's like unconscious, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's far believable than what these people who were not lying when they told us she was dead. They believed that she was dead out of their own ignorance. They believed that.
They didn't know the difference between a sleeping person and a dead person?
Stop freaking out. She's just sleeping. So
It wasn't uncommon.
Torah is saying there's far more easy, believable explanations to what happened with Jesus than he rose from the dead. And if you read the Bible, you know, and I bet you know this, that Jesus said the only sign that will be given this generation is the sign of Jonah. Well, if you read the 3 pages of Jonah, the second shortest book in the entire Bible, it says Jonah fainted twice. He fainted in the belly of the fish, and he fainted again on the hillside. He fainted. So it makes far more sense that people on the cross for 2 and 3 days and they have to break their legs to kill them. Jesus was only on the cross for 3 to 6 hours. And even in the gospel, when Joseph goes to get the body, Pilate says, and he marveled, he's dead already? So, yeah, it makes sense that he fainted and recovered.
He had a foot press to push himself up.
Hans Russ, do you know what the survival rate was for crucifixion in antiquity?
Probably hardly any because they were on the cross for a couple of days, dude. Not
in all cases.
Well, I'm sure there's an exception to the rule, but the rule was that they were on the cross for 2 to 3 days.
What is the evidence that this was the rule?
There was always, I've studied crucifixion because I was looking in the shrine.
Then you could be able to give us the source. What is the source that they usually were on the cross for days?
I don't know the exact source, but I guarantee you, if you Googled it right now, what was the standard amount of time Romans had someone on the cross before they died, it would say 2 to 3 days.
We don't actually even have data on that, right? What we have is...
You're just trying to obfuscate, because that's all you have.
No. I'm just saying,
You're obfuscating and prevaricating. You probably don't even know that
you're saying
Romans
this was
had
the norm.
crucifixion teams, that's all they did. They specialized in crucifixion. There was a centurion in charge of it.
I'm not disputing that. I'm disputing the specific claim about that. Oh, well, it typically took days. I'm saying the Romans did not keep statistical data on this, right?
Well,
so the best we have to go on is like the accounts they give us of crucifixions, and sometimes they report how long they were. Sometimes you're right. It could take a couple days, but to say that's what normally happened, like we don't have evidence for that.
What was the purpose of crucifixion?
It's to execute someone, but obviously, like in a public way, in such a way that would prevent, future.
It was an advertisement.
I was getting to that, Hans. If you listen.
Good. I'm listening. Go ahead.
Okay, I said it was an execution. It was a execution that was intended to function as a deterrent to politically subversive behavior. So see what happens when you let me finish my answers?
Wonderful. So here's my other question for you. What is the reason why God saved him? Now, my other question for you is, why would God save the son of Isaac and not his own son?
Can I respond to the first?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so I think there's a tension here, right? On the one hand, you're wanting to say, oh, it's an inside job by Pilate, right? Because his wife said don't have anything to do with Jesus. Hans, can I finish my point, please? I didn't interrupt. Okay. So the first point is like, you want to say that it's an inside job from Pilate because his wife said don't have anything to do with Jesus. And so now Pilate knows about this. But one of the earlier arguments you gave for why we should think that Jesus wasn't dead was because Pilate was allegedly surprised that Jesus had died after only a few hours on the cross when, supposedly this normally took days, even though we don't actually have statistical evidence for that. Now, you can't have that both ways, right? Either it's the case that it's an inside job, so Pilate knows damn well that the plan was never for Jesus to die on the cross, or he shouldn't be surprised, or be surprised about this. You can't have your cake and eat it too, so pick your poison.
I think it's both ways. Why wouldn't Pilate act the act? Like, oh, he's dead already? Okay, take him off. Here's the note to give to the centurion to take him off. Yeah, he would play the game.
Right, but the point is,
if it was an inside job, if you were pulling off an inside job, wouldn't you cooperate like that?
I don't think that's not cooperating with anything, though.
Why would he not want to kill Jesus?
Because his wife had a dream to not have anything to do with his death. That his wife said, this is a righteous and just man. It'd be bad karma for you to kill him. And I'm sure Dave knows that throughout the Bible, God uses dreams to influence the behavior of people. So you'd have to ask yourself, Dave, why did God influence the wife of the most powerful man in Judea to not have anything to do with his death? Why would God do that?
Does the text say that God gave her this dream?
Yes, I'm pretty sure it does.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. All right. So you don't think God influenced Nebuchadnezzar or Joseph or the Pharaoh with dreams either?
Well, I think those texts pretty much clearly say that God did give those dreams, but I'm not sure if the text ever says that God...
You don't believe that God influenced Pilate's wife with a dream. You don't believe that. You're going to go on record.
I am skeptical of that, and I'm not sure the text says that, which is why I asked if you could, support it.
Why did they say that in the gospel, that she was influenced?
Because that's what happened?
Oh, but God didn't have any part of that.
Wait, the visit to Joseph or the visit to Pilate's wife?
I'm asking you if you believe that God had any part in influencing the wife of Pharaoh with a dream.
Yeah, that one I'm fine with.
Okay, so you do believe that God influenced Pharaoh's wife with that dream.
Pharaoh or Pilate? Who are we talking about?
I'm sorry. Pilate's wife with that dream.
Yeah, no, I don't believe that God gave... I mean, I'm open to that if the text says that, but I'm not sure it does.
Oh, okay. I'll look it up.
I have a quick question. If Pilate was faking it and, participating in a hoax, why would he let it get so far as to have Jesus nailed to the cross and hang there for three hours? To get that far.
To trick the Jews.
Well, I think they're saying that was...
Think about
Oh my God.
They're saying faking the resurrection was the hoax.
Yeah.
What?
They're saying the plan was to fake the resurrection, so it had to appear that Jesus died. If the hoax wasn't Jesus forgetting crucified.
Okay.
Basically, take him off the cross before he died.
Right. It's stab him.
That was the plan.
In the side also. Stab him in the side. Make sure it doesn't.
That's only in John, Michaela. That's only
Well,
in
so
John.
what?
John is not a synoptic gospel.
Well, you don't like Paul either, so you just choose which ones you
Well,
want.
Hang on. So it's not a synoptic gospel, so what?
That's right. Well, you know the reason why they're called synoptic gospels, right?
Yeah. They're literally dependent on one another.
Yeah, because they align with each other.
Uh-huh.
John is extremely different.
Yep.
Only in John is he stabbed in the side. Only in John is he
Only in
John is
so
Lazarus
what?
raised from the dead.
The question is, so what? Are you saying that you just are rejecting John as a reliable source?
Yeah.
And why? Because it's not a synoptic? Why is that a reason to think it's not reliable? So why is that a reason to think it's not reliable?
Very different gospel.
That does not mean that it's unreliable.
The Bible.
That does not mean that it's unreliable, right? So you need to give us a reason if you're going to ask us to reject the story.
Compared to the synoptic gospel, it's not as reliable.
Based on what?
Based on the fact that it's not a synoptic gospel, it doesn't align with the other gospels.
Do you think synoptic means reliable or more reliable?
John is inferring that Jesus is God, whereas in the synoptic gospel, Jesus makes it very clear he is not God.
No. You need to read Simon Gabriel's. You need to read
I
Simon
don't
Gabriel's
understand why
book.
you just try so hard to say that Jesus is God. What? Will you not believe his teachings if he's not God?
You seem to be
Aren't his teachings enough for you?
You seem to be
No,
trying
they
very
wouldn't
hard
have authority.
conspiracy theories to get around the story. Tonight, Paul,
Right, I'm going to kind of cut you down for camera.
I was just saying, if Christians are trying, I don't think these conspiracy theories you're coming up with, Cora coming up with, the snake venom rituals that Jesus and Lazarus were doing. Now, Pilate coming up with some reason, I didn't hear the reason why he wouldn't do this.
Because they were going to riot. The Jews threatened to riot.
Right, but why did right.
And so they manipulated him. They said, you're going to get in trouble with Jesus.
He would have done it to his wife and Andrew, okay?
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
I
That's
think
why
so, yes.
That's why he went forward, like, just on the spur of the moment, and told them to get him off the cross, before he's dead. Fake that you're stabbing him in the, fake all this. He put this conspiracy theory together at the last minute.
I don't think he did it at the last minute. He certainly was able to pull all the strings because he controlled every single Roman soldier on that crucifixion team.
Right.
I mean, what was his benefit from killing Jesus? His wife already told him, don't do it.
Now,
And you know
when did she tell him that?
Michaela,
I don't need a lecture. When did she tell him that?
in the Gospels.
I know when. In the morning, in the evening, just before the crucifixion?
The minute Pilate saw Jesus, his wife pulled him aside and said, do not have anything to do with the death of this man. I had a dream about
Got it. It was the last minute.
Not the last minute,
It
probably,
wasn't the night before.
several hours.
Yeah, right. But it was just during what was happening. Okay, he was brought to him. Okay, I got to figure out. Okay, I'm going to figure out how to do this.
I'm sure he did quite easily.
It's just kind of amazing that, and this may not apply to Hans in particular, but I think it does apply to Cora, right? But the same people who'll say that they can't believe in a because that's never happened before are going to be willing to say that Jesus was like the only person in all history to survive a full Roman crucifixion.
Dave, there are 2 billion people who believe that Jesus is the Messiah that think the resurrection is a monstrous lie. 2 billion people believe that, all right?
He wouldn't be the only person to survive a crucifixion. There are accounts of people surviving this.
Nope, you've got one other one, and it wasn't a full Roman crucifixion.
No, you don't have the full document.
What do you mean by full Roman crucifixion?
What I mean is someone who wasn't deliberately taken off while they're still alive. We have one account in Josephus. He comes across 3 of his friends. This is after the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD.
How do we know Jesus wasn't taken off while he was still alive?
Well, again, they are granting the gospel accounts, right? So the impression is that he's dead, right?
The impression is, right, but nobody, it's not like someone had they never wrote down that someone is inspecting him and that he is now officially dead.
Right, but Jane, the point is that you'd have to say this is the only person in history for whom this happened.
It's not. He was taken down within 6 hours, and the other account of them have taken him down was also about that same time period. like length of time on, so he is not,
Why,
he would not
why,
have
why are
been.
we assuming time length is the only relevant reference clause here? That
I'm
seems
not,
completely arbitrary.
I'm not saying it's the only, I'm saying it's similar.
Yeah, one similarity. Okay, but other
It's
than
not
that,
one
it's gonna be the
similarity, they were
only-
both crucified, they were both taken down, and they could have both survived. I'm not sure why you're saying that if he survived, he'd be the only one. We have
He would.
documented cases of other people surviving that about that same length of time being crucified.
You have a case of one person who did that, who was explicitly still alive. And here's the other thing too: that guy was taken off the cross with two other, right? And they both died anyway.
Yeah, the other two died. Yeah, but the thing is, when you say
So why are you saying
he could be
cases
the
like
only
it's plural,
one,
Jane? Jane, why are you saying cases like it's plural?
That, Dave. I'm happy for you to believe that. The only thing that bothers me about Christians is they tell other people, if you don't believe in this fantasy, you're going to hell. You know, I'm happy for you to believe in Jesus and his teachings and the resurrection, and every Sunday practice dying to your ego and being reborn in Christ. I think that's a beautiful thing. The only problem I have is Christian fascism, which every Nazi was a Christian, and they had on their belt buckles inscribed, God is with us. So that's a lie right there. God was not with the Nazis. So, and they believed and they died for that lie. So I'm happy for you to be a Christian and believe in all that, but please don't become another fucking fascist that goes after everyone else that doesn't believe how you do.
Well, that's one way to derail the conversation.
Can I offer a piece of advice that I was just thinking about while you guys were talking? I'm new here, so I just wanted to forward something while I have a chance. Does anybody mind hearing?
Go ahead, Jordan.
Go ahead, Jordan.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. So I believe there was a legal precedent for soldiers if they were told to crucify somebody, or they were told to keep a prisoner, or they were told to make sure that somebody was executed, that if they didn't follow through with that and the person survived accidentally, that person would be executed in either a similar way or a similarly brutal way. So it seems like there's, unless you have Pilate conspiring to keep Jesus alive, so maybe he wouldn't have been processed in that same way, though he did have higher ups. And if there was a riot, it would have been his fault. Would it add weight to the other side of the scale to say that, like, the centurions probably wouldn't have lied about this because then they could have been killed?
No, the centurion would follow the chain of command, which anybody that's been in the military knows you serve the rank right above you.
Right. I'm actually a 6-year veteran in the Army, so I know quite well.
Good. So you know the chain of command then, right?
I understand, yeah. I don't think that following orders that could get me and my men killed in a brutal way would be something that I would do just haphazardly. But I'm just trying to forward the idea that maybe it adds a little bit of weight to the other side of the scale, that, like, if Jesus had survived, if there was a chance that he'd survived, and it wasn't somehow proffered by Pilate or somebody of the higher-ups, then these people could have been punished. But just a thought to that.
Good point, Jordan. Good point.
Well, in 6 years of the military, Jordan, how many times did you deny the order of your immediate superior?
A couple of times, yeah. You're allowed to deny an unlawful order. In fact, you're obligated to by the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
That's why I asked you, how many times did you deny
It was a few times.
your immediate superior?
It depends on the nature of it. Like, a lot of times it was more of a conversation. So, like, we had to go out on a couple of very dangerous patrols, and there was questions about, do we want to do this, or do we want to wait? Do we want to maybe wait in a place that's potentially extremely dangerous, or do we want to stay here and then possibly have the same extreme danger approach? And so if somebody was to advance an idea like the platoon sergeant or the XO to everybody's liking, people could announce their gripes. Ultimately, with what the person did the say-so of the higher-ups, but there's many situations, especially where lieutenants and captains and other people who are commissioned officers are completely outranked by the people who are non-commissioned officers, which is not how the rank structure works. But if they know that they don't know what they're talking about, and they recognize that the non-commissioned officers are going to do what they want anyway, it happens quite a bit. Though you do salute the rank, and it is extremely important to follow orders, I wouldn't suggest that that's not what happens typically, but like in a situation where it's actually dangerous, usually the XO or even the person who's in charge has to be subservient to the person who knows what they're talking about, and the person who's going to keep the most troops safe. So I hate to give like a long-winded, like breathy answer to that. It is complicated, but I would be concerned that a Roman centurion would be something like a sergeant major. That would be a very, very powerful person, extremely dangerous, extremely hard, and extremely adept with combat. Has no problem killing a Jewish guy. Has no problem causing. If they caused a riot, they would just kill these people. Like it was like. So I'm not saying it was necessarily trivial, but at the same time, it does seem like there's a lot of precedent in Roman law that if these centurions or if the soldiers involved were to not follow through with the execution, they would be horribly executed themselves, and a centurion would have lots of people underneath.
Yeah, I heard that.
Who could get
My
it.
point,
So,
my
that
point
was
is
just my
far
suggestion.
simpler. That I guarantee you the centurion followed the orders that were given to him by Pilate. So when he gave the permission for Joseph to take the body off the cross, the centurion did it. That's all I'm saying.
Understandable. Yeah, and if the idea is that Pilate did listen to his wife and he was scared, and so he tried to like this put up job where Jesus was taken off the cross early, it does seem like that's possible. But like again, like I think Dave's got a good point when he says that the full Roman crucifixion is a really hard thing to survive, especially since he was also scourged and beaten and other things.
Which
And we have very examples of that happening.
Which scenario, Jordan, is more plausible to you? That Jesus' blood coagulated and he had flies walking across his eyes for 36 hours and then came back to life, or that it was a conspiracy with Pilate who ran the show because he didn't want the Jews to not know that he crucified Christ? Which scenario is more plausible to you? As a 21st century educated individual.
Educated is a strong word. Yeah, I mean, antecedently, if you don't think God exists, then obviously it's ridiculous that somebody was risen from the dead. I mean, I think a third story that would be more interesting for a person that's trying to consider the dead is that he died and then they made up the story, or they stole the body or something like that. That seems more plausible to me than he somehow survived this and people were convinced that somehow he was resurrected.
Between raising from the dead and having him faint and recovering, which seems more plausible to you?
I mean, if you antecedently deny God's existence, obviously the latter. If you don't, and you think that maybe there is a God and maybe Jesus was part of that, then yes, it would be entirely plausible to see him raised from the dead. But you have to sort of decide that question first. So, I think that it's a fraught question, because if you think God doesn't exist and doesn't do things and doesn't do anything in the world, then yeah, obviously Jesus had the stories about Jesus have to be completely made up. But if not, then you might be more open to the fact. But a third story that would comport with the data is that he was killed, and they made up the stories later, or after the fact, somebody made up the story about they made these appearances and stuff like that, and sort of made a bunch of converts that way. That would be a better direction. But the idea that like he survived the crucifixion is pretty implausible to me on prima facie. But though I'm not a medical.
Yeah, you do know that Jesus was not